Welcome back to another video. My name is Andy, and in this video I'm just going to share my experience of my first Ironman 70.3 event in Provence, France, and hopefully it can just offer some insight if you plan to do your first Ironman event at some point in the future. So to start with, kind of pre-race stuff, as you would imagine, it's a really well organized event and the amount of information that's available is just incredible for someone who's doing it their first time. Picked up registration stuff on the Friday, so you get like a bag, your swim cap, all the information in terms of timings, where you need to be on the Saturday and the Sunday for the race, but then also where you need to go to drop off certain bags, like your bike transition bag, your run bag, and then also where you're dropping your bike off as well on the Saturday, because you need to leave that somewhere overnight before race day. Race day itself, obviously an Ironman event starts with the swim, and for this event it is in a lake, which is about 30 to 40 minutes away from the city centre where transition 2 and the finish and where the run takes place. In terms of getting there for the race, if you're staying in the centre and a bit of a distance away from the lake, a couple of options. We decided to hire a car because my girlfriend, her mum and dad and my dad came out to support, so it was just a lot easier for us to drive up in the morning. But they do put on shuttles at like 5 AM to kind of ferry people to the race, and I also think they put them on for spectators as well. So a couple of options in terms of getting to the start line. So when it got to the first event, the swim, out of all 3 events, it was probably the one I was most nervous for and didn't really know what to expect. First reason being, I hadn't actually practiced in the wetsuit that I was going to be wearing, so I had no idea how it was going to feel in the water. I had no idea the temperature of the water. Just all these different things were kind of playing on my mind. So because I was feeling a little bit nervous about the swim, I ended up going up to the lake the day before and just did about a 500-meter swim, and it completely took away all the mental anxiety that I had come race day, because I knew how the water temperature was going to feel as soon as I hit the water. I knew my wetsuit felt good. So all those little things that were kind of playing on my mind, because I hadn't been able to practice in a lake or wear the wetsuit prior, it just allowed me to kind of relax a little bit come race day and take one thing out of my mind that I was thinking about. The swim itself, I knew I was aiming for under 40 minutes based on kind of my pool swim times, but I obviously didn't know how that was going to correlate to swimming in a lake, and also just having that amount of people swimming at the same time. Wasn't used to that at all either. My thought process with the swim was to go in the group with the 42-minute swimmers, so they kind of split you out based on the time you think, and I decided to go with 42 just because I wasn't sure how it was going to go. In hindsight, it probably wasn't the best decision, as I ended up doing the swim in 38 minutes, but I also made the mistake of going quite close to the boys instead of maybe going to the outside, and found out within the first 10 minutes that it was the wrong decision, because I kept bumping into people. I had to stop to do breaststroke. I just couldn't get in any sort of rhythm to kind of just focus on my breathing and focus on the swim. So in hindsight, probably should have gone with the quicker group and just backed myself, but also going to the outside. Once I managed to kind of get through the crowds after that first 10 minutes and get to the outside of the pack, it just allowed me to kind of have nobody in front of me, basically focus on my swimming technique, focus on breathing, and it became a lot easier then. So those are 2 things I'd recommend. Just kind of back yourself in terms of your swim, what you think you're gonna do, and also just maybe not go in the middle or quite close to the boys. I think a lot of people, maybe first timers like myself, decided to do that, and in hindsight, the best decision was to go to the outside of the pack. Regardless, 38 minutes, I was happy with that time. I do think in next time, I could maybe shoot for 35 minutes, maybe even quicker. So all little things that you can learn from. The next big learning was the transition coming out of the water to the bike. It is a fair distance to run to the bike. I think looking at my Strava, it was almost nearly a kilometer to get out of the swim, get to the bike, and then get out of the bike transition zone. So looking at the pros times, they were doing the transition in about 3 to 4 minutes. It took me about 11 minutes to do that transition, which is just way too long. I hadn't practiced these transitions anyway, but I was just faffing around in the bike zone. I should have prepared more of my stuff on my bike ready to go, instead of taking my bag off, sitting down, going through it all, making sure I had everything, double checking. Really need to work on the transition. Ideally get that close to like maybe the 8-minute mark, and it's just gonna save a bit of time overall. The second part of the Ironman, the bike leg, was absolutely incredible, and I would recommend this Ironman event specifically just for the cycle to experience it. It is very hilly, a lot of elevation, but the view that you get when you get to the top of these hills is just absolutely incredible. Being able to go on some of these roads as well when they're all closed off and not many cars is just an experience in itself as well. When it came to the bike, I decided to hire a bike out there. So I'd done all my training on a relatively cheap bike that wasn't the best, and I kind of based what I was going to do for the cycle off the times I did in training. So I was aiming for about 4 hours when it came to the bike. The bike I hired was a lot better than the bike I had, and I ended up doing it in 3 hours 14 minutes, which was way better than I expected. And the bike just made an absolute massive difference on the downhills, on the uphills, just everything was so much better. So if you are maybe traveling to a different country to do the event and you're not sure about taking your bike out there with you, definitely look to use one of Ironman's partners and rent a bike out there. They had some unbelievable bikes ranging all in different price brackets, so well worth looking into. But like I said, I would recommend the event purely for the cycle. There is only kind of one section to be aware of, and I think it's between 60 and 70k, and they warned us on kind of the race briefing the day before about this section, and it basically, I think it's just a few kilometers of just really steep downhill hairpin bends that just go on for ages. And I remember on the cycle itself saw one guy who was just kind of over the edge with 3 paramedics and an ambulance there, kept going, and then a few hundred meters further down there's another ambulance with someone being put into that, and then a few hundred meters again, the guy in front of me just couldn't keep control of his bike. It was quite wet as well on the day, and he just absolutely stacked it. I slowed down, asked if he was okay, and he seemed all good, picked up his water bottles that flew everywhere and just carried on. But some really dangerous sections on the cycle, but like I said, the whole cycle itself is just incredible. Then it got to transition 2 in the city centre, and it was a lot quicker than the first one, which is great. It took me about 8 minutes, but again, it was just faffing around, doing things that probably weren't necessary. It took me a minute or 2 to actually get my bike onto the stand. When I got there was a lot of bikes, and you meant to put it on your number, but I think at that point people just shove their bikes on close to the number they've got and just hope for the best. So little things that I can work on that side of things. And then obviously it gets to the run, which is 13.1 miles, half marathon to finish. And the course itself is a 7-kilometer loop, which you have to do 3 times. Again, similar to the cycle, quite a bit of elevation for a run. And after doing all of that, I certainly felt it. I felt it within the first 2 minutes. I started cramping up and was like, this is gonna be a long 13.1 miles. It's gonna feel a lot longer than 13.1 probably towards the end. When it came to pacing for the run, I just wanted to kind of keep everything under 6-minute kilometer pace. The run itself mainly takes place on quite narrow streets through the city centre, and then you kind of go out to a park where it's quite hilly, and then you come back into the city centre, and the support and the atmosphere of the event itself around that area was just incredible. Volunteers are just absolutely awesome, just supplying water, gels, energy drinks, food. I think there was just so many different volunteer stations, and the encouragement from them, the support was just absolutely amazing. I'm sure it's like that in most Ironman events, but specifically this one, it just seemed unbelievable. I think the hardest part with this run, maybe not necessarily the elevation, but it was the 3 loops itself. So as you got to the finish line, there's a turning left or there's a turning right. So it was only on the 4th time seeing that turning left that you could go. So quite often you get to see that finish line, you'd see people going down there, but if you've got 2 or 3 more laps to go, you just have to keep going. And that was mentally quite a tough thing to do, especially on the last loop. You know you've got 1 more to go, seeing people go down that finish line, but you've just got to kind of keep in your head just 1 foot in front of the other and just get around and know that next time you come round, you're going to be turning left. And then crossing that finish line is just absolutely unbelievable. Get on the red carpet, heading down, seeing the timer there and just crossing it was an incredible feeling. Finished with a time of 6 hours and 10 minutes, which to be honest, I was really happy with. At the time I was thinking I could have pushed for sub 6, but I really didn't have anything left in me, and I probably didn't do enough training, if I'm completely honest with myself, to do a sub 6 time. But it was my first time doing it, so I've now got a time to work towards for the next event, and I'm absolutely confident, having done this event now, seeing where I've kind of messed up in certain areas, where I can work towards in training. I have no doubt that I can get under that 6 hour mark quite, not easily, but quite comfortably if I put in the work. But the event itself, I would just highly recommend it. Not just the event, but just Provence in general. It's an absolutely beautiful part of the south of France, and there's so many other areas around Provence that you can visit as well. The food is unbelievable. The alcohol is so good out there. I think we were getting glasses of wine for like €2, and yeah, just the whole place is just a great atmosphere, especially on that weekend. You start to kind of see people around the Ironman village, dropping your bikes off. It just really builds the whole atmosphere. And I think when we did the race briefing on the Saturday, I think over 50% of the people there that weekend were first timers. So if you are thinking about doing it and you're a bit nervous, maybe thinking it's gonna be just a bunch of pros or whatever, it's really not. It is people coming from all over the world. And that's probably about it really. I'm sure there's things in there that I haven't fully covered, and if you've got any kind of questions about the event itself or just training or whatever, then feel free to leave a comment or connect with me on Instagram, and happy to kind of answer them. But thanks for watching this video. I think in terms of my next race and kind of next thing that I'm going to work towards, there is a duathlon in September in London, which is a 10K run, 44K bike, and then a 5K run to finish, which is slightly different to the type of things I've been doing the last couple of years, which have been more kind of longer endurance races. I'm looking forward to doing something now for the next kind of 12 weeks, training towards something a bit more intense, a bit quicker, and just kind of changing up the training a little bit. And then the plan, hopefully, is to maybe do the London Marathon next year. I've entered the ballot and just waiting to find out if I've got a place. If I don't get a place, then the goal is probably gonna be to do, well, probably gonna do a half Ironman again next year anyway, regardless of the marathon situation. But if I don't get the marathon place, then I'm gonna look to do a full Ironman towards the end of the year. So a few kind of things I'm working towards. I kind of just wanna stick with triathlon for the next year or two and just really work towards that. And like I said, I've set a time now for this half Ironman. I want to beat that time, go sub 6. So hopefully I can start posting a bit more regularly. But thanks for watching this video. Hopefully it was somewhat useful, and see you in the next one.